All right, guys. So we have a video from Film Theory, or I'm sorry, the Film Theorists. It's called "Star Wars is Dead. Here's how to fix it." In parentheses, the Acolyte. So I'm gonna be honest with you. I kind of stopped watching, like all of the theory channels. It really is just because MatPat's gone. I mean, like, and that is no offense to any of the other guys, but it really is just like that human feeling of, the familiar thing that I know is gone. I'm scared, so I just kind of stopped watching their stuff. I'm just being honest, okay? I'm being for real, no cap on a stack. You know what I mean? But I saw this thumbnail and I was like, all right, let's check it out. Let's see what they have to say. My opinion, the correction is that I don't know. It might be a little bit of a stretch to say that Star Wars is dead. Like I still think that there is a lot of interest in the property still, but as far as like, if you're talking about the subjective quality of it, I mean, yeah, like I mean it's not great, and the way you fix it is you just make better stuff. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it really is that simple, to be honest with you. Like there are a lot of people that are like, oh well, it's too woke or whatever, and you know, you can make woke stuff, and even a lot of those people will shut up if it's good. Right? You have a bunch of people that are like, oh, well, George Lucas' Star Wars was better. You should be making stuff that's more in line with, like, the lore that was expanded out with the, with, like, the Star Wars Legends books or whatever. That's the good stuff right there. And you can completely contradict whatever happened in Legends. As long as it's good, those people are going to shut up, too. You could even outright... Because I know a lot of people are saying that the Acolyte like contradicts Star Wars canon in some ways. I've talked about on the channel how, at least as far as I understand it, I don't know that I necessarily agree with the arguments that have been presented with me or to me. But if the Acolyte was good, I think most people wouldn't even care about that stuff. Like I really do think that it is as simple as you should just make better content. But let's see what they have to say.
Star Wars is broken.
We are on the brink of extinction!
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I mean, that was just stupid. Oh my god.
They fly now!
They fly now!
They fly now!
I'm the spy.
I'll be honest. When I watched The Rise of the Skywalker, I had a lot of problems with that movie. I didn't really think twice about the "they fly now" line. You know, it's like I know people have coined the term, I guess, like MCU dialogue or whatever. I don't know. I've never really understood what was so bad about them remarking about the fact that they've modified the droids or I don't even Jesus Christ, I don't even remember what those enemies that they're referring to are, where they're saying that they fly now. What were they even talking about? I don't remember, but whatever. I don't mind them really like referring to, oh, these enemies have a modification, let's call it out. I don't know. But I mean, I guess the complaint with that is that, do people think that they were trying to be funny with that, or I don't even know. I just find the line innocuous. I just didn't even think about it when I was watching the movie. I had so many more problems with The Rise of Skywalker.
What?
Let's fix it.
All right, this guy has all the answers.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show that still
You're not mad, Pat! Okay, I'm going to get over it. Don't worry.
pretends to open automatic doors using the Force. So, have you guys heard about the Acolyte?
He's
in concept,
me.
it's really cool. A Jedi murder mystery set during the height of the Order. Sounds awesome, and it definitely has its...
I feel like they also really cut themselves off at the knees when I remember, they hyped up the Acolyte as like, this is a murder mystery. And I feel like it's barely that. Because you gotta figure out the mystery very early on. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really a mystery. Like, yes, there's like mystery in terms of what exactly what happened, you know? Like, what exactly did the Jedi do to the witches? But as far as like the mystery of, well, who's killing the Sith? Like you figure out very early on. So I feel like just as a murder mystery, it's just not even really that. I remember the same thing happened with like Loki, because I remember they talked about Loki as if it's like this is a time traveling mystery thriller, and then you watch it and it's like, is it? I guess. Like, I guess they don't know that Kang is the Time Lord or whatever. It's like, I don't know, just like if you have an interesting premise, like, yeah, follow through with it. You know what I mean?
Moments. Like, for real, that Jedi kebab right there was rad. But other parts of it in execution.
Power one, the power two, the power of many.
Okay, another hot take. I don't mind witches doing weird witch shit. You know what I mean? Oh, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I don't know. Like, is it cringy? I guess, yeah. Like, but they're like witches, and they're doing like a weird witchy witch ritual. I don't know. Like, I feel like anytime I see like a witch ritual being performed, I'm like, this is kind of weird, isn't it? Listen, I'm just saying this is an actual ritual.
Yes, come on.
Hallelujah! Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah!
Yes.
Hallelujah!
I'm just saying. Listen, when people have their beliefs, they just be saying shit, you know what I mean? Bro, do you guys remember or were you guys ever a part of a church that would speak in tongues? I don't remember what kind of church it was when I was a kid, because we kind of hopped around different denominations. But I remember when I was a kid and I saw everybody else around me speaking in tongues, I would just start making shit up because I don't want to feel left out. I was like, damn, the Holy Spirit isn't in me. Where is he? Where are you at? Where are you at? I was like, maybe if I just start speaking in tongues, if I just start making up stuff, the Holy Spirit will find me. It does wonder, like, are they actually doing what I would do, where I would just make stuff up to not feel left out? Like, what percentage of people in these kinds of churches do that kind of thing? I don't know. Many such questions. Anyways, let's get back into the video.
Oh man, this show can be rough. Yeah, The Acolyte is the latest line of Disney Star Wars projects that have had a
Oh, I never watched Tales of the Empire.
mixed reception, to put it
I thought people liked Tales of the Empire. I thought I heard good things about that one. Really? Is that the audience score or the critic score?
kindly. And this series seems to be where a lot of creators and fans have sort of reached their tipping point with frustration.
I mean, was that not... How many times can we reach, like, the tipping point where Star Wars is dead? It's like... I feel like this type of rhetoric has been happening with Obi-Wan, with the Book of Boba Fett, The Last Jedi, or even The Rise of the Skywalker. I mean, if we're being honest, Star Wars has been just kind of not that great for like the last 6 years, and we kind of just keep on watching anyways. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. That being said, I like, will there be a tipping point and where the brand just completely falls apart? I mean, it's possible for sure. I don't know that The Acolyte is like especially. I just don't think that there's anything special about The Acolyte in that regard.
Canon breaking, lore busting, absolutely. How would they not know that would be the case?
I'm still not really sure if it's not as clever as it thinks it is, or if it's smart enough to lay red herrings. I kind of have suspicions about which one it is.
Those are two of the most level-headed movie critics on this platform, and that isn't what you want to hear from them. Honestly, it's heartbreaking to see, and not just with The Acolyte, but with this franchise in general. I've been a Star Wars fan for literally as long as I can remember. I was the target demo for the prequels with all of its cartoons.
I will say, so I made a video where I reacted to Jeremy John's episode of a review of, I think it was the third episode, the one with the witches. And I do feel like there are a lot of people, and I stand by this, a lot of people were, I was getting cooked in the comments, so to speak. There were a lot of people that felt like the way that that episode portrayed the Jedi in a negative light was like this heinous thing that Disney is doing. And I really do feel like people were not picking up what George Lucas was putting down with the prequels. Where I really do feel like if you watched episode 1 and you watched the Jedi take Anakin, a child, away from his mother, and yes, she gave them up, and yes, he wanted to go, sure, but you watch the Jedi take Anakin away from his mom, tell him that he's not allowed to love his mother, tell him that, they grow up, the Jedi grow up being like, yeah, you can't love anybody, actually. You can't have any attachments to people. And then they just leave Shmi to a life of slavery. Because it's like, okay, listen, I can't love my mom, apparently. Okay, I got that. Can we at least get her an apartment on Coruscant? You know what I mean? Like, can I at least get her out of slavery? It's like, no, you can't do that. Like, if you watch that and you walk away being like, yeah, man, the Jedi are awesome, I feel like you just weren't picking up what George Lucas was putting down. Like, I just don't know that I agree that the way that the Jedi are portrayed in episode 3 is, like, all that different from how George Lucas portrayed them. I'm just, like, I really don't know if people understood what George Lucas was saying. Or maybe it is also possible that I am just, like, maybe thinking too much about it. But that is what happened. Like, yes, a slave gave her child away to people that were going to take him outside of a life of slavery. But that doesn't make the people that took Anakin not bad when they don't also just save the mom slave as well. Like, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I'm doubling down on my opinions. You know what I mean?
With all of its cartoons and video games and collapsible plastic lightsabers, I am exactly the sort of person who should still be vibing with Star Wars. And though I really want to like it, they make it really hard sometimes, and it feels like everyone else feels the same way. Regardless of what you've thought about Star Wars recently, whether you're a casual fan or a hardcore stan, Disney absolutely does have a Star Wars problem right now. And even though I know we've done our fair share of theories about how Disney is the absolute worst, even in the last couple of weeks here, I want to help them out. I want Star Wars to be something that we all love again. I want to be excited about it, just like we were with Episode 1 and Episode 7. But how? Where do we even start to try to solve?
Make better stuff. Really? Okay, but to give a more detailed answer, what they really need to do is Kathleen Kennedy has to go. They need somebody in charge of the IP that A, cares about Star Wars, because I don't know that I believe that Kathleen Kennedy even cares about Star Wars, and that B, is actually, like, looking over scripts and actually reading everything and is actually able to identify, hey, this is really great, let's greenlight this. Because, like, obviously Kathleen Kennedy is a legendary producer, but she's obviously not able to, like, pick out projects. I mean, it just is what it is. And, like, even, like, I don't know, like, Leslie Headland, like, she's not nobody, right? She made the Russian Doll, which I personally haven't watched. I mean, maybe I would watch it and I would be like, hey, this is terrible. But, like, I've always only heard good things about Russian Doll. It is surprising that the Acolyte is as, mediocre as it is. But, like, I feel like the buck does have to stop with Kathleen Kennedy. Like, she should have read Leslie Headland's scripts and gone, hey, this isn't good enough. I mean, also, it would probably be good for them to start making pilots as well. Because Marvel is doing that now, actually, right? Because the way that Disney approached their their stories or their shows is that they would kind of just like shoot them like they were movies. And they would just like charge forward like a bull in a china shop. They wouldn't do the traditional TV thing where you make a pilot and then you evaluate whether or not you're going to continue the series. Like they just need, Lucasfilm needs somebody like a Kevin Feige that is very familiar with Star Wars, that is actually able to have a plan for of the stories they want to tell, and that is capable of reading scripts and identifying what's going to work and what's not going to work. I really do think it's the leadership that needs to be changed. That's like the first
this mess. Well, after putting a ton of thought into this, asking myself, why is the fandom feeling this way, I've come to a conclusion. The main problem with Disney's Star Wars, the reason Star Wars is dying, why every new project causes frustration, it all comes down to one word: disorganization. And I'm not just talking about having a better plan for the sequel movies or whatever. This problem runs so much deeper than that. Mickey, come here, sit down, we gotta talk. Everything about your era of Star Wars has been disorganized, but thankfully, there are ways to fix it, but it might involve you, gasp, listening to your fans. So grab your blasters and lightsabers, chat, as we try to repair this galaxy far, far away. So this is a very complex problem for Star Wars here, and a solution's gonna take a lot of different steps. Our problem solving is going to need a multi-pronged approach, so let's break this down bit by bit. Cool? Cool. The first thing Disney needs to do here, make a plan and actually follow it. This is something that everyone can see as a problem. For the last 10 years or so, Star Wars just cannot stick to an organized plan. I mean, everyone knows this story at this point. J.J. Abrams admitted that Disney and Lucasfilm didn't have a plan heading into the sequels, which meant that episode...
Yeah, I mean, that's just so crazy. I don't understand how do you not do that? That's so weird. That's so weird. Like, how do you not plan out what you're gonna do?
Episodes 8 and 9 became huge headaches and frustrated everyone involved. And movies like Solo were so poorly planned that they fired the directors while it was being...
Yeah, the Solo is such a weird one, because it's like, apparently the reason why they fired them is because they were making the movie like too much of a comedy. And it's like, okay, but I mean, maybe it's entirely possible that they did make a plan for what Solo was going to be, but then Lord and Miller they kind of went off the reservation and started making a wacky, funny movie. Maybe that's possible, but when you look at the rest of Disney projects, or of Star Wars projects in general, I'm kind of more inclined to believe that they just didn't even talk enough. I feel like they probably just didn't talk enough with Lord and Miller, and they didn't have a clear plan of attack. And then Lord and Miller started doing their thing, and they were like, "Oh wait, no, actually, we don't want that." Like, that wouldn't surprise me.
Filmed, causing 85% of the movie to be reshot. All of that sucks, but you probably know that already. What you might not know are just how many Disney Star Wars projects have been announced or leaked and then killed or gone missing.
So crazy.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you missed some of these, because there seems to be a new one every other month. We have the Rangers of the New Republic show, a trilogy.
Yeah, Rangers of the New Republic, that was going to be that was going to be a show that Gina Carano was going to be the lead in. And then, everything that happened with her happened, and that I guess they just decided to not make it. Yeah, there was going to be a trilogy by the Game of Thrones creators.
From the Game of Thrones guys, another trilogy from Rian Johnson.
Yep.
A Rogue Squadron movie.
Oh my God, yeah. That was going to be directed by Patty Jenkins. Patty Jenkins, the lady that directed the Wonder Woman movie. Or the two Wonder Woman movies.
From Kevin Feige, another movie from Taika Waititi,
oh my God,
another movie from Sean Levy, another movie from J.D. Dillard.
Oh, I actually don't know what that is, to be honest with you. That's the one that I don't know.
And a Lando film from Donald Glover.
Hey, they're allegedly still making the Lando movie.
And all of that on top of 3 more movies that they announced last year.
Yeah. These are the 3 right now that are allegedly definitely happening, but I mean that just doesn't mean anything in the world of Star Wars.
that may or may not ever come out. That's 12 projects with no real evidence that they even exist at this point. They announce so much and release so little that there isn't any confidence in any lineup that Lucasfilm announces these days. The long and short of it is that because of how messy and disorganized these announcements have been, there's very little confidence from the fan base that any of these projects are actually going to see the light of day. And if they do, they're gonna end up as something that they weren't originally pitched as. All of this leads to panic, giant overreactions, and mediocre final products. A lot of this can be traced back to Disney and their push into streaming. The mandate in late 2019 and as the pandemic hit in 2020 to drive users to Disney Plus meant that all of their studios were forced to make or announce a lot of stuff quickly to
Yeah, this is actually a point that I always bring up when I talk about Marvel. And it also probably does apply to Lucasfilm as well. There actually was a mandate like that. Back when there was a new CEO when Disney like brought on a new CEO when the old one retired, his name was Bob Chapek. He actually did have a mandate that Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm that they had to make shows for Disney Plus. They had to make like 2 to 3 shows a year. And they were just like, okay, I guess we'll just fart out, Miss Marvel and Moon Knight and She-Hulk and blah, 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 blah. And to their credit, they did. Like, they technically did make those shows. And, at the end of the day, like, some of them turned out all right. I personally enjoyed Miss Marvel a lot. But even the ones that I enjoyed, like Miss Marvel, have their very definite, downsides of, man, the back half of that show is weirdly a different show. It's like, why did you not stick to New Jersey and follow the characters that we fell in love with in the first 3 episodes? But anyways, I do think that is the main reason why Marvel has fallen off as badly as they did, is because they were pushed to make as much content as possible. And when you're making that much content, it's impossible for Kevin Feige to have the quality control that he was known for. So, and yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that probably did happen with Lucasfilm as well. That, yeah, they were just like, hey, you need to make like 2 or 3 shows a year. And that's why they were like, Obi-Wan they pooped out Obi-Wan and Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka. And I guess it's possible that, yeah, those shows also just didn't have a sense of quality control as well. And technically, and so the good thing is that like a year or 2 ago, I think, God, the timelines are bad for me. But yeah, like a year or 2 ago, the old CEO, Bob Iger, was actually brought in and they ousted Bob Chapek. And he basically reined all that back, where they were like, okay, we're going to cut back on the amount of streaming shows that we make for Marvel and Star Wars. Or I think they specifically said Marvel. We're going to cut back on the amount of Marvel shows. So now, they basically redid Daredevil Born Again, because that was going to be another show that was just going to be rushed out and farted onto the service. They basically reshot that entire thing. They haven't been releasing any movies this year because they were like, all right, we're going to put a pause here and retool everything. So we'll see if Marvel can come out of this looking a bit better than it has been. But the problem with Lucasfilm is that I still think that the main thing is that there just isn't anybody at the top. Like, there isn't a strong leader of Lucasfilm that has a vision. I still think that that's the ultimate problem with Lucasfilm, is that Kathleen Kennedy just isn't Kevin Feige. I don't think she cares about Star Wars, and I don't think she has. I don't think she's capable of making a strong plan of a strong, like, interconnected storyline to tell. I don't think that she's that person. So, like, while I agree that the streaming mandate definitely didn't help, I don't know if you can necessarily say that that's necessarily that's the major problem here.
to make shareholders happy. And they didn't have the internal structure in place to make these changes. Again, an organization issue. Thankfully, the solution here is simple. Organize your plan and then stick to it. Imagine that. And the crazy part is, you don't even have to announce anything. You can have your internal plans, work on pitches and scripts until they're to a point that both the corporate side of the company and the creatives making the projects are satisfied. Like, seriously, we here at Theorist work on projects at a much smaller scale, and I literally cannot believe that they start filming movies that haven't had a final vision nailed down. After you have your internal plan in place,
You know what's so crazy? Is that James Gunn, when he became the CEO of DC Studios or whatever, the fact that he had to come out and say that they will never start production on a project before the scripts are done. The fact that he came out and he said that as like a thing to hype up the DCU is an indication of where we're at. Because it's true. Marvel, and I assume Lucasfilm as well, they'll just, like, they will start shooting projects when the scripts aren't done. They will do that. And they're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. It's crazy. That is just, that just should not be the case.
you can make a roadmap that actually seems realistic, which you can then share with the audience, helping build confidence back in your IP. It gets everything neat, tidy, and most importantly, organized. And I can speak to this from personal experience, but when a smaller company is bought by a larger company, like Lucasfilm being bought by Disney, it's not always an easy process.
My name is Lucy, and I have to figure out who I am.
Wow. I don't care.
I know it can sound boring, but you have to build new
know what that show is.
workflows and communicate with your new partner. When Lunar bought Theorist, there were new people added to our process, but we took the time to work that in, and more or less, for you, the audience, we hope it has been seamless. We have the organization in place to keep our videos on a solid roadmap with this new partner backing us, and that right there seems to be a key piece that's been missing with Lucasfilm and Disney. Oh, and speaking of roadmaps, that leads us to our next big problem to tackle. See, we're not just talking about the disorganization behind the scenes with the corporate shenanigans. Right now, it's very confusing to follow Star Wars releases too. Sometimes it feels like you need videos explaining the canon timeline, updated yearly from deep dive channels just to keep up. And hey, I get it. If you're a casual fan of this series, like you've watched the Skywalker movies once or twice and are really into Baby Yoda because he's cute, the order in which things come out with this series must seem entirely random. Seriously, look at what we've had since Disney took over. First, we start with the Rebels animated show set before the original trilogy, before we get episode 7, which is set like 30 years after the original trilogy. But then that was immediately followed up by Rogue One, set before the original trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, this shouldn't matter because technically, the whole point of Star Wars is supposed to be that the galaxy is so vast that you can tell stories anywhere in the timeline and it doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. But I think a big problem about Star Wars as well is that they are so, like they're so insistent on having Easter eggs and references that you can't, it's like almost impossible to get away from like the Skywalkers or the Empire or blah 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 blah, and like they always like they have to tell stories that are like related to these things. Like I feel like they I don't know, maybe this is going too far, but I do wonder, like, are there stories that you can tell in Star Wars that have nothing to do with the Empire, nothing to do with the Skywalkers, nothing to do with the Jedi even? Like, are there maybe you can start creating new lores around like just different galaxies that have their own shit going on? Like maybe they also use the Force, but maybe they just don't even have anything to do with the Jedi, because you could set whatever that project is, you can set it anywhere, but it doesn't really matter because, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with the larger storyline that they've been mining all these years. But then you could also make the argument of like, okay, well, is that even Star Wars anymore? And, you know, maybe that's right, but theoretically, the timeline shouldn't matter all that much because the Star Wars galaxy is so vast that you can tell whatever story you want. But like, yeah, like I said, the main problem is that they try to interconnect it so much, and they try to put in as many Easter eggs as possible that it makes it feel like you have to watch everything.
Again? Okay. Then we jump forward to episode 8, a direct sequel to episode 7, followed by another prequel with Solo. And then there's The Mandalorian set before episode 7 again? Then we jump forward to episode 9 at the very end of the timeline, back to The Mandalorian and Boba Fett set between trilogies. Then we go back even further to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor's prequels. Then forward to Ahsoka, and now the Acolyte set before everything else? Oh my god, that's just what? From an outsider perspective, there is no rhyme or reason to these releases or their placement on the timeline. It's bad enough that even mainstream outlets like CNN or Popverse say it too, straight up asking, why does Lucasfilm have to make it so confusing? In short, it goes back to our overarching problem here. Their programming and timeline is disorganized. So, how do we solve this? Simple. Have what we're gonna call eras for the Star Wars movies and shows. Think of these like a publishing initiative where all of the content you make supports a bigger storyline or idea. So we're gonna organize all of our live action media here into self-contained storylines, miniature series with a set beginning, middle, and end before moving on to a new story. For example, imagine instead of all of these different shows or storylines happening at the same time, The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan and the Acolyte or whatever, keep all of the shows or movies coming out contained to the same overarching storyline. Let's say that for the next 6 or 7 years, we only follow The Mandalorian and its connected stories. We see The Mandalorian and Grogu bond, team up with Boba Fett, meet Luke and Ahsoka, defeat Moff Gideon. Stuff like the Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka, series with problems that had good stories at their core but suffered from bloat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad idea, to be honest. I don't know if fans would necessarily like that, though, to be honest with you. But I think this is honestly this probably would be pretty smart.
Could instead be trimmed down into movies that stand alone, but are additive to the overall Mandalorian storyline. And hey, let's throw in a series about Luke's new Jedi Academy too. People want to see that, all leading up to it.
Why would you? Oh my gosh.
Let's throw in a series.
Why, I like how he brings up the phone. It's like, yeah, that's how people are watching media these days, I guess.
Series about Luke's new Jedi Academy too. People want to see that, all leading up to a big event movie where everyone teams up and fights Grand Admiral Thrawn. Then, when it's done, it's done. The rise of the Mandalorian era is put to rest, and those characters get to ride off into the sunset. At least for a bit, before they themselves can return to thunderous applause down the line, just like we've seen with Anakin in the past few years.
Making me emotional.
Absence lets the heart grow fonder, and we need to let people miss characters again. Then we move on to another era, perhaps something like Rise of the Empire, where we can have stories like Obi-Wan and Rogue One and Andor all grouped together. You could even adapt some of your older expanded universe content into live action this way. If this idea sounds familiar to you, well, it absolutely should. This is how Marvel handled things with the MCU, especially in the early years. They broke their very complicated film franchise and timeline into 3 easy-to-follow phases, where everything built to big event films. Each project could stand alone as a good movie, but they were all additive to the overall experience. And hey, hopefully they'll let these retired characters actually rest instead of panicking and bringing them out of retirement too early. No.
Well, we'll see about that. They're definitely not going to do that.
But seriously, Disney, do not bring back Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Evans out of nowhere. Let Tony stay dead, let Steve stay old, please. And hey, again, speaking from personal experience, it's also how we here at Theorist handle things. We have initiatives that we build everything towards, eras for the company. At the top of the year, we specifically wanted an era for Matt Pat's final theories on each channel, letting him revisit old topics or ideas that he'd wanted to do for ages before riding off into the sunset. Right now, we're in the era of the new hosts, where we're getting to know you as the audience. And in the future, we have a whole lot more planned with new ideas and new shows, so subscribe if you have any interest for that. Regardless, the MCU was a good model, and everyone copied it for a reason. But even if you don't want to look at your sister company Marvel as proof that this works, you can just look at your own brand, because there are so many examples of this working and working well with Star Wars. Most of the Star Wars novels of the past 5 years have followed this model. 25 of the last
I want to know because I don't read.
last 38 books have been part of what Lucasfilm calls the High Republic Publishing Initiative. And that's a storyline set a couple hundred years before the movies when the Republic was at the height of its power, with the storyline broken into 3 phases. That lets the different storylines of the High Republic era that they're telling be very easy to follow, and after they finish up with Phase 3, they're ending the story and moving on to a different storyline. And the books aren't the only part of Star Wars that follow this model. The comics are doing it right now, all set during the same time period and ending in September so they can move on to new stories. And I mean, just
Wasn't there I remember reading an article about how there's this big council of creative people that they created to there's a big council and team of people that are the leaders of the novels. And it's I remember it was so insane that they created this group of people that are leading where the books and comics are going. And they don't do that for the movies and TV shows. I actually remember reading about that. So I don't know. People can tell me in the comments if the books are good, or at the very least if they're more coherent than the movies.
look at the prequel era content. Pretty much all of it centered on the Clone Wars, and now fans look back at that time with a lot of love. Speaking of fans, that leads us to our final major issue here, the disorganization with Star Wars lore. So if there's one fandom that really cares about the tiniest minutia of lore and canon, it's the Star Wars community. Most named characters have detailed backstories, but the tiniest background extras can have huge fan bases. There's a 10-paragraph Wikipedia page about the stripe on Han Solo's pants. I'm not making that up. But Disney has made a lot of choices with the lore that are questionable, to put it mildly. Some decisions were huge, like throwing out all the old games and books and
Disney threw away expanded universe 10 years ago, but still can't move beyond it. Ooh, well, so here's the thing about Star Wars, Legends or whatever. And people can tell me, can let me know how exactly it worked, but wasn't it already the case that stuff wasn't really canon? Wasn't it the case that all of the expanded universe content wasn't organized and wasn't coherent and had its own contradictions and whatnot, and that it wasn't really feasible for Disney to just be yeah, this stuff is canon. Put aside whether or not you think that Disney has been making good content and that they've been filling in those holes with good content. Put that aside for a second. At the time, was it not more reasonable to be yeah, all of that stuff, we're going to put that as Star Wars Legends. It's not really canon. Now we're actually going to put in the effort to make our own coherent canon. That's how I always understood it, but I'm also not that familiar with all of that material. So people can let me know in the comments if that stuff, if it would have been reasonable to just make that canon.
Comics when they took over to start the canon from scratch, but others have been really completely unnecessary, unforced. The canon were huge, like throwing out all the old games and books and comics when they took over to start the canon from scratch, but others have been really completely unnecessary, unforced errors.
Okay, well, I don't know if judging by the choice of words there, I don't know if he agrees with the decision or not.
For example, one of the latest conflicts in the fandom has revolved around
Penis
this
head guy.
cone-headed guy.
Or that.
Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi, and specifically his appearance in The Acolyte, a show set about 100 years before the prequels. Ki-Adi-Mundi wouldn't even have been born at this point. Technically, he didn't have a birth date in Disney's new canon, so this doesn't matter all that much in the long run. It's such a small continuity error that I hesitate to even call it that. But why?
Yeah, so I guess... Okay, so if I'm understanding that point correctly, maybe there was a Star Wars expanded universe book that gave Ki-Adi-Mundi a birthday, but since that's not canon anymore, then Disney, I guess, made the quote-unquote change that Ki-Adi-Mundi was alive 100 years ago. I mean, I don't know. That's, I guess, yeah. Yeah, that's not even necessarily canon breaking. But okay, now he's asking the question of why make this change?
Why make this change? It's just inviting frustration, especially since...
If I were to guess, maybe, if you want to be the most charitable possible, maybe they wanted people to be asking the questions of like, hold on a second there, Buster. In the prequels, Ki-Adi-Mundi said that the Sith haven't been seen in however many thousand years or whatever. I don't remember the exact number of years. How, if he's here and they're seeing a Sith Lord, how does that make any sense? And then maybe, guys, okay, this is copium here, guys. Maybe in episode 7 and 8, we'll get a good explanation. I don't know.
Since it's the latest change in a long, long list of them. They've changed how kyber crystals work, where Luke's Jedi temple was located, aspects of Mandalorian culture, and that's just the small stuff. A lot of Disney Star Wars films introduce ideas like the Force Dyad or hyperspeed ramming without much explanation. And then there's shock when the lore-obsessed fandom asks questions, when they take legitimate issue with these conflicting details or ideas. Now, you might think that Lucasfilm would have a team within the company to keep track of these little details, you know, to make sure that everything stayed consistent. But believe it or not, that isn't really something they seem too concerned about. There is an internal team called the Lucasfilm Story Group, but their job is more to keep the world feeling consistent, to make sure the big story beats don't conflict with one another, and that's just shocking to me. Disney is not meeting their fans where they are. They're not respecting what this fan base that they've cultivated for this franchise really...
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really go into all of those, so I personally am not too familiar with all of the, like, I'm not familiar with how kyber crystals, like kyber crystal changes or anything like that. So yeah, I'm not really sure.
Want. Back when George was in charge, he knew everything important about this world, and since...
But again, so okay, this is my question here. Was George Lucas keeping meticulous detail about how the expanded universe worked? And the main reason why I asked this question is because I've heard about 2 different like books and or comic books. I heard about a comic book where like Indiana Jones discovered or on Earth they discovered Bigfoot was actually Chewbacca. Maybe I'm making that up. But I've heard that happened in one of the expanded universe stories, and then I've also heard another expanded universe story where Chewbacca was like killed by a moon. Somebody threw a moon at him or something. Maybe I'm just making this stuff up, but like from what I understand, a lot of expanded universe wasn't they treated it the exact same way. Now this isn't an excuse for Disney, because I think if you're gonna throw out expanded universe, then you need to do a better job than they did. But I'm just kind of going back to the point of like, well, you kind of had to throw away the expanded universe.
Most every project went through him, he was able to keep a check on the inconsistencies.
Maybe that's true, but like I don't know, like when, and then again, this is another question. When The Force Unleashed came out, is it the case that stuff was like meant to be like actually canon? Is that really the case? I don't know. Maybe it was.
He was able to tweak ideas to fit into his world, and if he...
Ugh. This isn't the best thing to bring up here.
He made a mistake or changed his mind on something, that was just George being George and shooting from the hip. Disney can't do that anymore, and they need to make organizational changes to make sure it doesn't happen again. Honestly, it's a lot like how Theorist has operated in the past. Like, Matt used to have all of this institutional knowledge in one person. But when he knew he wanted to retire, he helped Theorist train up new people to take his place. The new hosts have spent a lot of time working on getting theories down, and outside of us, we have a whole team that's been training to work on thumbnails, on titles, on scripts, edits, and the business side of things. Collectively, it's literally our job to keep things consistent here, so Matt doesn't have to be around all the time, and we made organizational changes to make this happen. For Star Wars, the worst part of this is that it's a self-inflicted wound. There are ways to mitigate this consistency problem, but they need the organization to do it. Why not use your big releases, the Disney Plus shows and films, to actually address these lore concerns from the fans? Explain why forced dyads are a thing now, or
What is a forced dyad? I don't even know.
why hyperspeed ramming wasn't commonplace before, with a line that's more than just this.
We need to put some hold-on maneuvers, do some real damage.
Come on, that move is 1 in a million.
That's not an explanation, that's a hand wave.
I mean, that is probably true. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's probably fine. Like, yeah, like you can't just do that all the time. That is literally true. Like you can't just like crash into a car, I guess. Or I mean, I don't know. I guess what am I saying? I guess you probably could in real life. I don't know. I don't necessarily mind that, to be honest.
Wave. And if you don't do this, you're gonna have fans wondering and getting confused about these new ideas. Are Luke and Leia a Force dyad? Are May and Osha a Force dyad in the Acolyte?
What is a Force dyad? I don't know what that is. Hold on, let me look it up, because I don't even know what this is. A Force dyad, also known as a dyad in the Force. Wow, thank you. Was when two Force-sensitive beings had a unique Force bond that was unbreakable, that made them one in the Force. The power of a dyad was as strong as life itself, with the individuals forming the dyad sharing a connection that spanned across time and space. When was this introduced? I don't even know what this is. Or where this was a thing in. Appearances? Star Wars Battlefront 2? The Rise of Kylo Ren? This is in The Force Awakens? And the last am I what I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember what the hell this is. I'm just being honest, bro. What? Members of a dyad were attuned to each other's senses completely, including what they saw, heard, and felt. They possess unique force powers, such as the ability to physically interact across many light years in the galaxy. A dyad could also utilize force healing to such a degree that should either member of the dyad die, the other would be able to transfer enough of their own force energy to resurrect them. So does that mean that Rey? Oh, a prophecy foretold that there would be a dyad in the Force, which had been unseen for generations by the time of the New Republic era. The prophecy dyad was realized within Ben Solo. Is that Kylo Ren? I think so, right? Okay, it is. I just wanted to make sure. Oh, so they were a Force dyad? Is it? Okay, I feel like they never said that in the movies. Or at least I don't remember that this was a thing. Oh my god. Although they were enemies during the war between the First Order and the Resistance, Solo and Rey shared a unique bond that featured prominently in the lore of the Sith Eternal Cultists. During the battle in Exegol, the life force of their bond was used to restore the Sith Lord Darth Sidious. Bro, I'm pretty sure they were just into each other. I feel like this is all a bit of a weird explanation for two people being horny. If you ask me, personally.
Don't know, because there's no organizational structure in place to tell us. And that's what's at the core of this part of the problem, right? Not listening to fans. Disney and Lucasfilm have a real issue when it comes to listening to the feedback and criticism coming from their fan base. There's no organization in place to handle that. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about the people who hate on anything Disney or Star Wars related in bad faith. You know the types. The ones more concerned about the appearance of the people on screen rather than the stories being told. Disney has a responsibility to this IP and its fans, and there should be a team looking out for these mistakes to handle community feedback. And then if something does slip through, helping the creative leadership find a way to address it in the future. Having a line or two in a future movie actually explaining why something happened in a way that fits and works. Just saying, it's a problem when the fandom wiki seems more organized and up to date than official projects. I wanted to talk about all of this today because, yes, I want Star Wars to be as beloved as it used to be. I want to get excited for all of their projects again. But even more important than that, Star Wars is in a transitional moment. It's transitioning generations, not only with the fans who have liked it for decades or have just come in from discovering the sequels or The Mandalorian, but also in its universe. If this is a brand that wants to continue to expand, it needs to transition away from the same 6 or 7 characters that the franchise has been built on.
True, I don't ever want to hear the word Skywalker again in my entire goddamn life.
Forever. Your Solos and Skywalkers, your Palpatines and Kenobis. But even more important than that, it's transitioning the people behind the scenes. George Lucas has handed the reins over, and Disney is looking for the next generation to really take Star Wars into the future. Because of all of the change.
Can you say that Kathleen Kennedy is the Joe Biden of, of Star Wars? She needs to step down, okay?
That has happened both on and off the screen, this disorganization should have been expected. That's why I've talked so much about our experience here at Theorist. We faced a very similar problem as Star Wars is, but we knew that keeping our company and our creative organized was the best way to make a challenging transition work best for us. Yeah, but more importantly, for you, for the audience and the fans that are the lifeblood of everything we make here, for everything in the creative industry. That's why I'm so confident that the solutions we've talked about here today would solve the problems here with Star Wars. I lived through them. So Disney, Lucasfilm, you have to get your act together. You have to shape up and actually organize to start listening to your fans, because if you don't, your fans are gonna stop listening to you. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. And if
So yeah, I think that was a pretty good video. I definitely agree about the streaming thing, right? Where there was that big mandate to make a bunch of content. I mean, that you have to imagine that that's like at least part of the reason as to how like something like Obi-Wan and the Book of Boba Fett, how they were like as not even like bad from a storytelling standpoint, but from a production and like just pure just quality standpoint of like the visuals and special effects. Like you have to imagine that those series ended up as badly as they did just because they were probably like, hey, we need this by this date, and it doesn't matter what it is, you gotta fart it out. So I would hope that Lucasfilm is having the same thing that Marvel is currently doing, where they're like really making sure that their projects are of quality. But I think the big problem is that, and then to address some of the other things in this video, I mean, yeah, they really should have like people. They should have a group of like 5 people that literally their entire job is just making sure that lore stuff makes sense. I mean, that's a given, right? And yeah, I could also, I think it would probably be nice as well for them to have like phases for them to be able to say, hey, we're now doing this big overarching storyline, and that's going to be what you're going to be seeing for the next like 5 or 6 years. And it's like you probably still want to make like one-off storylines that are just like way off in the timeline, you know, similarly to how the DCU is trying to do like their multiverse thing, where it's like, hey, we have our DCU, but you know, we also have the Batman that doesn't have really anything else that we're doing right now. I think you could probably still do that, but yeah, it probably would be smart for them to be like, hey, we're doing this storyline, and that's like our main thing that we're focusing on. So I definitely think that that's smart as well. But the main thing that I would just add to all of this is none of that matters if the projects are bad. And I don't think that Kathleen Kennedy is the person that is just the person that's able to sniff out what the good or bad projects are. Like, she should have read the Acolyte scripts and gone, hey, you should probably let the mystery of who May is, of how May is the killer, that should be something that's not answered for like the first 4 episodes, probably. You know, or even 6 episodes. Like, that should be something that probably gets revealed like in the latter half of your thing. We should probably be seeing like 3 or 4 Jedi getting killed and them trying to solve this mystery. If you're going to call this a mystery thriller, you know what I mean? Hey, if you're not going to do that, and this is just going to be like a weird, very personal story about like these 4 characters and whatever, like, then maybe you should be, they should have read those scripts and been, hey, I don't give a fuck about these characters. You should probably be writing more scenes that make me care about Osha and Soul's relationship. We should probably have some kind of flashback that shows them in their training phases and establishes why we should care about their relationship, and then like another flashback where we see Osha leaving the Jedi Order, and it should be heartbreaking. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or did she get kicked out? I don't fucking remember. Like, it's the quality at the end of the day, and I think that the big thing that needs to happen is that Kathleen Kennedy needs to step down, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think that the guy for that is necessarily Dave Filoni. Ahsoka was pretty not great. I don't know that guy's the guy either. Honestly, maybe have it be like a dual thing. I guess it would. I guess the duo is Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Like, maybe go like they should probably just step down from directing and just solely focus on being the executives of Lucasfilm and actually guiding these projects and actually reading scripts and being like, hey, this isn't good enough. So I don't know, because obviously like Jon Favreau is like a competent filmmaker, and then Dave Filoni is the lore guy that knows Star Wars. So I don't know. But yeah, obviously, like it definitely is the case that Disney Star Wars is not in a great place. The thing is that for whatever reason, Bob Iger just seems to not want to get rid of Kathleen Kennedy, and that could be his downfall. It feels like, because he has made tough decisions like that in the past. Like, if you remember, I remember Kevin Feige was having he was having troubles with God, what's his name? The guy. There was like some other executive at the company, and they were both in charge of Marvel. Like, one of them was in charge of Marvel Television, and the other, I think they were both kind of in charge of the MCU. And then Bob Iger stepped in, and he was like, okay, you know what, Kevin Feige, you're now just in charge of everything. And then that other guy, they were like, okay, now you're just in charge of Marvel Television. And for a while, so like Bob Iger has stepped in when there was like trouble with their Marvel division. I have no idea how or why he hasn't stepped into Lucasfilm and been like, Kathleen, you're out of here. You are Dunzo Garbanzo. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, like, these projects actually come out first of all, and hopefully they're good. But we'll see. Let me know what you think about everything that I've said in the comments down below. Feel free to tell me why I'm a big stupid poo-poo head for my takes. Seriously, I'm not even being facetious here. I enjoy the feedback, even if they're negative. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.